Hello and good evening. My name is Madeleine Thien, and it's my great pleasure to welcome you to the launch of Brick 106. This is she, our 106th issue, and on the cover we're honored to have work by artist, photographer, and filmmaker Ida Molyneux, and you'll find more of her work throughout the issue. My fellow editors and I read for and imagined this issue over the summer of 2020. So we were reading while in lockdown or semi-lockdowns or green zones or red zones, missing family and friends, hoping and sometimes despairing. And we are so grateful to the writers whose pieces are in this issue, and to every writer who submitted. Thank you for putting so much under the microscope, and thank you for reaching out to us with your stories, your poetry, your essays. This issue is alive with questions. It's an issue that probes our moment, which is a long moment, complicated ground. And among the works in here, there's an essay by Kegro Macharia on the aesthetics of Kenyan novelists as they reconstitute the grit and the sand of truth-telling. We have Jaspreet Singh on the 1918 pandemic and the present, and the collapse of fictions that most countries tell themselves. And we have Lina Marouani, who has a ferocious, horrifically funny take on the genre of the diatribe in an essay called The Baby-Making Machine. And also unforgettable pieces by Sana Wani, Myrna Kostash, Yasmina Lada, Cason Sharpe, Ocean Vong, and many more. I'm super excited about the readings tonight. We will hear from Terese Mason Pierre, Amanda Mei Kim, Chimwemwe Undi, Robert Hass, and Kevin Adonis Browne. On behalf of my fellow editors, Laurie Graham, Dion Brand, David Cherry-Andy, Michael Helm, Liz Johnson, Rebecca Silver-Slater, and Alison Lasorda, I want to thank the contributors to Brick 106 for your words and for the ingenious and powerful ways you've made us pay attention. It is my great pleasure to give you our first reader, Terese Mason Pierre.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon or good evening, wherever you're listening from. My name is Terese Mason Pierre, and I'm going to be reading two poems for you. The first poem is published in the latest issue of Brick magazine, and it is entitled Fishing. My grandfather says we can eat what we kill. We wade into the water and find a shark. In the latent night, we carry it home across the mountain. I memorize the way your feet step before mine, your plan for leading me out of this spectacular cycle. Folded in and over ourselves until our parents finally call for the doctor. Our love has never allowed itself to be gutted. Reach a hand in there, all the way. Pull out a heart, lungs, digestive mechanics. I love your legs in the water. I told your sister when she fell from the cliff that I wished it had been me you wailed over, ripping the clothes from your back, your black skin raw. We are too final for the gardens they sing about in church. Our hands never coming close to hold whatever hot, shining city we're meant to love. This body between us is dangerous, a writhing prehistoric wound. Our bodies are weapons, and we know that. We know no one wants this fish or its live birth, just its teeth around our necks. And the second poem I'm going to read is called Descendants, and it was published in the fall issue of Starline magazine, which is a speculative poetry journal in the States. Descendants. This time, we have enough money for large popsicles. One button and we're off to the corner store, slicing by the trees on our jetpacks. The cashier has a gold tooth, smiles when we hand him the cotton bills. "Who gave you that confidence?" he asks. June says, "Walking Miss Shauna's dog, those 9 legs a match for no one." On the sidewalk, bells chime, our mouths full of laugh. Over and over again, I say I want to put her face on the moon, grinning and brimming for the next universe to see. The top of my mouth tingles from cold, my fingers electric where June grabs my hands to swirl me into my mother's past. Hot diamond energy, this girl, leaping over the holosigns and street lamps. "What you want for your descendants?" she asks, mouth iridescent. "Joy," I say, "what you want." My skin sticks to hers. Whole planets hear my heartbeat, the smoke of my thoughts roiling to make me blacker, bold. Oh, but that laugh. The bleeding sky, touching it. "On my daddy's shoulders again," she calls from down the street, a good shot through time. A few bursts, and I am with her, holding her sweet bronze, beating flowers on my skin. Her laugh brings me back. "Watch me," June sings, and she launches. She soars into the air, red-tongued, lock-crowned, and for a moment blocks the sun. Thank you so much.
Hello, my name is Mei Kim, and I'll be reading a piece of nonfiction called Van Life, which is written in 4 parts. And I'll just read a short piece from 3 of the sections. And for the sake of the story, I should mention that I'm a Japanese Korean Californian who grew up in some of California's very poor rural areas. Part 1, Bande. Our family was part of a group of agricultural workers and tenant farmers, Japanese, Mexican, Filipino, and Chumash, living in a region famous for strawberries, labor strikes, and boxers. My mother or grandmother would shout, "Bande," and my brothers and cousins and I would clamber into the van, elbow our way to an overturned crate or a bag of mulch to use as a seat, and cling to each other as we wound our way through mountain roads and coastal bluffs. We never knew where we were going until the door slid open to reveal a forest floor covered in fat pine cones, a stretch of glittering tide pools full of salty limpets and sweet rock crab, or usually a field full of unpicked green beans. Every part of our lives involved vans. On New Year's, my grandparents lit incense for their van, just as they once had for their horses and cows. Our only public art was the painted vans we saw on the highway, muscled stallions galloping across the desert, ocean sunsets with the saint floating in the sky. Part 2, Dream Big, Live Small. I heard a story on public radio last month. Apparently, millennial coders, accountants, and others have happily taken up the van life. The journalist described a customized van's headroom and narrow interior, and I knew it was a Mercedes-Benz Sprinter, even before she said the words. I had a taste of van life, eating Velveeta because it doesn't go bad, and living in the 70s version of that exact same cargo van. Ours was bright green and modified for camping, one of just 20 or so sold in the US. My mother spent $25,000 on it, which was a scandal back then. She could have bought an actual house with that money, but she had just discovered that my father was having an affair, and she was determined to empty their shared accounts, a signal that she too could destroy what they had built together. When my parents split up, they each took 2 kids. My 2 older brothers went with my father, and my younger sister and I climbed into the van with our mother. For 6 months, we lived in the backyard of a mansion where my mother worked as a housekeeper. I made peanut butter sandwiches for my sister. We were 5 and 10. Today, when I see vans in my neighborhood, I can tell when there are people living inside. by the heat shields, the privacy curtains, and the fogged windows cracked open to let in fresh air. Even in summer, van life can be cold at night. There's nowhere to go to the bathroom, and smells can't escape metal and glass. You keep your food in a plastic bin. You bathe with a washcloth that is never totally clean or dry. You wear gym clothes to bed and school clothes to gym. Bedclothes are a luxury. Part 4. Lay down my sleepy head. Our green van kept running into the 90s, so it turned out to be a good investment after all. By that time, my parents had reunited and moved to a little ranchette in Fairmead, a poor, unincorporated African-American town in what was once the heart of California's Klan country. As I drove to my parents' house, I passed collapsing mobile homes, tiny bungalows with tarps over the roofs, window frames filled with peeling plywood boards. By then, hundreds of household wells had run dry. Agribusinesses had sucked the water out from under them, and people had to go to the next town to buy bottled water. The night sky still glowed from the world's largest women's prison a few miles down the road. When my father was dying, he always wanted to go to the African American church on Sundays. He had grown up in South Los Angeles at the height of the Depression. Because his parents were political refugees from Korea, his American culture was African American culture. He sat in segregated theaters, went to segregated schools, and he grew up going to the Black church. There's a particular kind of sadness that comes when you're holding your dying father's hand in the parking lot of a church, listening to gospel music. We never went inside. We didn't want to intrude. His words were gone, but somehow there was an echo inside him, a boy 75 years ago who could still warble softly, "Down by the riverside, down by the riverside." When the music part of the service ended, we drove away. Thank you.
Erratum by Chimwemwe Undi. Against novel misnomer, against etc., erratum, apologia, against tumid oratory, against going sans attending, against echoes prescience, against unaccounting, fractured calculus, against government God, against our briefly hoisted faces their vaseline and sweat glisten, against unmuffled murmur, against body to mean me, against listening and learning and trying to do better, against centering, circling center, against normal, against ordinarying, again rebellion from bellum, from bellyache, surely, against certainty, against sickle, against blackened choir, against expendability, again whole begets wholly, again plate fingers form duke, against fist or flesh or language, against logging in ledger, against countability, against sheet or fine fescue, river bound in dress yellow, against pale palms, dark fingers, against skin, shifting on time's broad throat.
Hi, I'm Robert Hass, and this prose piece, is called The Government Lake. It was dark, and I could hear the cicada out the window where there's a lawn, several very large pines, and a pond. And it was going like crazy, derip, derip, sometimes derip, rip, a rip, but in no particular sequence. Mostly it was derip, derip, but piercing, as in the poem by Basho that goes something like deep stillness. The voice of the cicada drills into the rocks. I was feeling restless anyway, so I went out into the dark and lay down on the lawn, which was wet, and the air was cold, and found myself looking right into the eyes of the cicada that just kept at it, derip, derip, apparently indifferent to my presence. I said to it, trying to sound sociable without sounding needy. Did you know that the poet Jim Tate died? And the cicada said, can't you see I'm trying to attract a mate? Would you please get the hell out of here? And I said, I thought you'd like to know. And the cicada said, you could almost hear it sighing, or the circadian equivalent. Was he a friend of yours or something? And I said, well, more a companion spirit than a friend. We were both poets. We crossed paths occasionally over the years. I admired his work. I think he liked me. Do you feel like you were beside other cicadas you respect? And he said, beginning to be interested in the conversation, which I was grateful for, of course not. We compete relentlessly. What do you think I'm doing out here in the dark? But there must be some other cicadas whose style you admire. You know, you're both out here working. You must find yourself thinking, that dude is pretty good. The cicada said, we would never call each other dude. That's totally a human thing. And I need to get back to singing. You're really getting into my kitchen here. Well, I can go back inside. I have a book of Jim Tate's poems that was published after he died. They're prose poems, mostly kind of odd little stories. Can you attract a mate with a prose poem? The cicada asked. I said, probably not. Lyric. So anyway, I'm going to make a joke, okay? Bug off. And I said, well, let me quote to you this one Japanese poem, okay? It's pretty famous in the human world. It goes, you'd never know from the cicada's cry that it was going to die. I went back to my room where all you could hear outside in the dark was derib, derib. But I was pretty used to it, and I picked up the book of James Tate's last poems, The Government Lake, and I began to read.
When I'm overstressed, my throat constricts. I close my eyes and try to swallow, and when I can't catch myself after the first or second try, my heart leaps, then gallops. The constriction travels past my collarbones, pulling inward from my shoulders toward the center of my chest. Breathing turns shallow, and I feel the constriction tightening in my gut, sinking, rooting at my navel. I clench my body for fear of spilling out. If I'm standing, I shift my stance from left to right, then back. If sitting, I move in my seat. I shake my feet, never loosening my core. I stretch my fingers and toes. It reminds me of a dream I had of my maternal grandfather's ghost and the visions I've had of my own untimely death, until I get pulled back into the everyday of it all. Panic is part of it. The debilitating normal of everyday life and the push to be in it, because however close to it or far from it we stand, there we are, in it. I'm 46 years old and a black man. A black mind in a black body. A cliche. Endangered. I remember when I was 27, but only barely. I am considered an enemy of the state, as are you. I am in mourning. The constriction persists because, like you, I've managed so far to outlive the recent dead. And because I've managed to do this, I have the privilege of wrestling again with what it is supposed to mean that I and my people remain endangered. The privilege of living in terror, which is to say living while black. We remain endangered because we are black and because we dare to breathe in this world. Viewed still as a commodity to be processed in various ways, we breathe, and our constricted breath, or whatever might result from it, is a natural resource, our energy appearing infinitely renewable. Our suffocating is billable, as essential to the operation of this world as any other thing. This is a truth most self-evident to us. More so now, but it has always been this way. And because of this, I am overcome, beset by spirits and silences, haunted. This is how I know I'm not dead. The dead haunt, the living are haunted. I want a calculus that is a bit more divine, but damn. Wrestling and almost out of breath, I reach, as I have been taught, for what I know and often forget, a word and a song. Sing. See me true, Lord Jesus, see me true. See me true, Lord Jesus, see me true. There's a race that I must run, there's a victory to be won. See me true, Lord Jesus, see me true. See me through. A spiritual for my shaking spirit. For myself shaken in this moment by spirits. A song for another one of my people who know as we who remain know. The profane calculus of black life. One more is also one less. One more is no more. See me through before they see through me, before I am outlived and forgotten. See me through this silence to what I have missed, what I have failed in all my shadowy enlightenment to see. Show me what I have missed. Let me hear what I have not heard. See. See his long, long face, his broad, broad nose, his thick, thick lips, his dark brown eyes, his black, black skin. I've watched his transfiguration, his face hard, then soft, inscribed flesh, soft, then hard, anguish, pouring into terror, terror churning into fear, fear drying on the street, a sculpture of a man. Wrestled, flattened, then raised up. Here's this man, what we have learned art is supposed to do for us, for humans. Teach us to ourselves, showing us more than what mirrors can show. Light loses itself in him. He is everything and everything that we have been taught to hate. Some of us to hate even about ourselves. He is everything. Long, broad, thick, dark, brown, black. And more than everything, a mural. Black life in perpetual memoriam. I regard it now the art we suffer and often die to become, and wonder secretly if it is better to be alive. Speaking for myself, I have hated my own round face, my own sharp nose that flares, my own lips like dried bauxite, my own jaundiced eyes and teeth, my black, black skin. But I know better. There is more to me than this self-loathing, a better, more beautiful path to my people than this. I need an everything that will reflect this understanding. We need a new everything. Everything that, in a way, would defy certain metaphors. Understand that I'm not against metaphor in general, only the ones that make less of me to argue that I am more than I am. I am not, for instance, a beast with superhuman strength. My defiance of metaphor may be a superpower, a talent in need of parables and bodies to breathe life into them, but I am not superhuman. I am not subhuman either. I cannot claim either of those, not so I can claim the human in me. I am, like you, the thing itself, a human life in perpetual imagination of itself. And I wonder if this is what it means to exist in memoriam of a future that is better than this. I am made up, composed, but not a concept. Nor are you, for that matter. Nor is he. And yet, in his face I imagine the subtle crags and clefts of an ancient monolith. I might be forgiven for remembering a grand bushfire sweeping the breadth of the low, sprawling hills I see on my way to visit my mother in San Fernando. The sun rising on me naked in Manzanilla, kissed and loved in the salt, sand in my mouth. No need for his lips for that, or his eyes to see. I have seen. I am seeing. But how, Lord? No daylight between us, but how? No light, and I have never been blacker than I am right now. I am grounded, blacker than ever, old and cracking, almost silent, reminded not only that I cannot breathe. No. I'm reminded that the existential reality of my life is that I have not breathed in years. Alive and unbreathing, I am, with those like me, a paradox. I squeeze through my own cracks, insisting as before I go, before light loses itself in me, and the sound decomposes in my throat.